gloomy April evening in 1883. At 221B Baker Street, the dawn had barely touched the windows. I was in a deep sleep until I felt a hand on my shoulder. I opened my eyes to see Sherlock Holmes, wearing his dressing gown, holding a flickering candle. He whispered, "Sorry to wake you, Watson, but life is often more mysterious than our dreams. A lady is downstairs, trembling, and I know when someone comes to Baker Street at this hour, they aren't bringing good news."
I dressed quickly and went down. In the sitting room by the fire sat a young woman, Helen Stoner. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with pure terror. Holmes looked at her for just a second and said, "Don't be afraid, Miss Stoner. You took the first train from Waterloo Station this morning, and you traveled a long way in a dog cart through muddy roads to get there." She looked up, stunned. Holmes smiled, pointing at her sleeve. "There is fresh mud on your left arm, a very specific kind, found only in that type of carriage. Now, the real question is, why are you here?" Miss Stoner began to tell the story of her stepfather, Dr. Roylott, a violent man who kept leopards and hyenas in their crumbling old estate in Kent. Helen whispered, "Mr. Holmes, 2 years ago, my sister Julia died mysteriously right before her wedding. Her last words were a scream, 'The Speckled Band!' Today, I am getting married, and last night I heard that same strange whistle in the walls, the same sound my sister heard. I know, tonight, death will come for me." After Helen Stoner left, a strange silence fell over Baker Street, but it didn't last long. Suddenly, a violent bang shook our front door. Seconds later, the door to our sitting room flew open as if hit by a hurricane. Dr. Grimesby Roylott burst in. His massive body filled the entire doorway. His face was a twisted mask of rage, muscles on his forehead twitching like snakes, and his bloodshot eyes burning like a wild tiger's. He held a thick hunting crop, striking it rhythmically against his palm. After Roylott left, the room became calm again. Holmes walked slowly to the table and picked up the bent iron poker. He looked at me with a calm smile, and then, with a sudden burst of strength, he straightened the iron back into its original shape. He said, "Watson, the doctor is a powerful man, but his temper will be his downfall. By showing his strength, he gave me a valuable clue. He is afraid, Watson, and a criminal is only afraid when he has a dark sin to hide. Come, friend, we have very little time. We must reach that cursed manor in Kent tonight." When we arrived at Stoke Moran station in Kent, the evening was fading into a thick, heavy darkness. The sky was a strange shade of gray. As we reached the massive estate in a carriage, my heart filled with an unknown fear. The house was in ruins. One side completely collapsed, and the walls were covered in rotten green moss. It looked like the building itself was suffering under a curse. Suddenly, from the shadows of the bushes, a leopard and a wild hyena emerged. The eyes of Dr. Roylott's strange pets glowed in the dark like evil fires.
Miss Stoner led us secretly into her bedroom. Holmes entered and immediately began a deep inspection with his magical magnifying glass. First, he noticed the bed was bolted to the floor with large screws. It couldn't be moved. Then he stopped by the wall. There, next to no window, was a small ventilator connecting directly to Dr. Roylott's room. Holmes whispered, "Watson, This vent isn't for fresh air. It's a bridge for evil. And look at this bell rope hanging over the bed. It's not for calling a servant. It's not even connected to a bell. It's just a rope hanging down to the pillow. Why, Watson? Why would a useless rope be here? Holmes's eyes were burning like fire. He realized death climbs down this rope unseen. The night is deepening. A terrifying silence has swallowed the ancient Stoke Moran manor. Holmes and I entered Miss Stoner's room with extreme caution. Holmes gave strict orders. Not a sound, not even a heavy breath, because Dr. Roylott was waiting in the next room. We blew out all the lights. The darkness was so thick I couldn't even see my own hand. Holmes pulled a revolver from his pocket and handed it to me. He whispered, "Watson, tonight death will be only inches away. Whatever you hear or see, do not move." Every tick of the clock felt like a hammer in my ears. Suddenly, a strange sound came from outside, the cry of a wild beast, perhaps the doctor's leopard. Cold sweat began to form on my forehead. Hours passed. It was nearly 3 in the morning. Suddenly, a ghostly streak of light from outside hit the wall. I noticed Holmes holding his cane tightly, staring fixedly at the ventilator on the wall. Suddenly, a high, thin sound drifted into the room, like steam escaping from a kettle. A sharp, hissing sound that made my blood turn cold. Holmes jumped onto the bed. He began to strike the bell rope with his cane like a madman. He shouted, "Do you see it, Watson? Look there! It's the Speckled Band!" I could see nothing. I only saw a thin, thread-like shadow slip back through the ventilator in the dark. Moment, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the next room. It was an agonizing cry that I had never heard in my entire life. It was hard to believe it came from a human throat. Within seconds, the whole house became silent again. Holmes lit his flashlight and said in a grave voice, "Watson, the game is over. The killer has fallen into his own trap today." We rushed into Dr. Roylott's room. What we saw there is beyond words. Dr. Roylott sat in his chair, his eyes bulging out, and wrapped around his head was a strange yellow and black speckled band, an Indian swamp adder. Holmes said, "This is the deadly snake whose venom can kill in seconds. The doctor trained it to go through the vent. Today, when I struck the rope, the snake got scared, went back, and bit its own master."